Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I would like to spend a little bit of time today on what I called another ramble. And some of these people, ideas, concepts I've talked about before. But towards the second half of the video, I'm going to be bringing in different thoughts, new ideas, and even the ones that you may have heard me speak about before. I might be talking about them in a different way, different perspective, and possibly there's some new listeners too. So um, this really is a lot of this is about the power of the invisible. So let's see where we go. As you know, the question that really drives me is how do we create our reality and how do we use astrology for that too? There won't be a lot of astrology in this until the very end, actually, just to let you know, heads up. But undoubtedly, we have a huge amount of chaos, of turbulence, of churn with the collapse of the old system happening in the world. I think that's undeniable wherever we look. It's very obvious, but it has been incredibly clear in the astrology that this was going to happen. I've been talking about it for at least 2 years. So have other astrologers. In fact, astrologers would be surprised if it wasn't happening. This is meant to happen now. It is absolutely on time, as is all the revolutionary energy, the unstable geomagnetics. All of this was expected. And so that that can be very reassuring that although it seems chaotic on one level at this higher perspective of astrology, a little bit like the New York street I was talking about last time, um, yep, we're right on time, absolutely on time with this. And we are well aware there's some horrendous things happening in the world. I mean, the war in the Middle East is just beyond any words. And many of us think, well, what can we do? What can we actually do? We can't get there on the ground. It's very dangerous. You can't get access. Are the charities reliable in terms of money actually getting through to the people who desperately need it? Can we lobby our political representatives? Are they available to hear us even? um, or are they focused on something different? So what do we do? And therefore, do we have to wait for some change in the external to change the world, our world, or can we actually take some action to change it, some positive action to change it? And as most of you know, that's why I set up that very simple idea of the 15-minute meditation on a Sunday at 7 o'clock UK time. Many of you know about it. If you don't, it's all for free. 15 minutes a week, and I'll put the link below this video so you can get all the information. I'm going to be putting a lot of links under this video because I know on some devices you can't access them, but if you go onto a laptop, you should be able to, and just click on show more, and all of these links will come up because, as I say, I'm going to be referring to quite a few people and websites. So, and the reason this is so important, and people are having really incredible experiences with what I thought was a very simple idea, but there's more and more telepathy happening in the group. Many people are having the same experiences of Sufi dancers coming together and spinning and spreading light across the world. Other people are starting to see higher beings coming in as soon as we start to help us on our way. Many hundreds of them, which is just beautiful, because what we're trying to do in that 15-minute session is raise our frequency in all the ways I describe in that video below. And so everything cascades from our frequency. Everything in our life and everything we affect in our life cascades from our frequency. And people sometimes say, well, what good can that do? It's just woo-woo. You're just working with the invisible. Where's the tangible result? Where's the measurable result? Well, I may not be measuring it, but many other people doing this kind of work are and have done. I mean, I frequently refer to Lynn McTaggart, who is just really excellent in her scientific method. I've referred to her book, The Intention Experiment. Also on her website, lynnmctaggart.com, she has a tab on it called Evidence to give you a lot of evidence of the work she does with meditation and healing. And that is just ongoing through her Power of Eight groups. So check that out. You can't go into all the detail here, but check that out. I mean, Dr. Joe Dispenza is another one, incredibly powerful work, which is invisible. It's working with healing, it's working with meditation. I've witnessed many miracles in those sessions, those workshops of genetic and terminal conditions disappearing. I remember very clearly a chap, quadriplegic, standing up from his wheelchair after decades, and the whole room just burst into tears, all working with the invisible. Dr. David Hawkins, another wonderful man, a very brilliant psychotherapist, and he developed something which I know a lot of you will be familiar with, called the map of consciousness. And he was really using kinesiology with many thousands of people to test out this scale of consciousness. And what he said, because we know, I've talked many times about how in physics there's a law of downward causation, where higher frequency is much more influential and powerful than lower. And so what Dr. David Hawkins says in his work, he passed away a few years ago, sadly, said one person vibrating at enlightenment counterbalances 70 million people only vibrating courage and below. Courage is around about 200 on his scale. One person vibrating at peace, and many of us feel peace. We embody peace through our days. If you can drop into bliss through your day, you're at the level of peace, which is 600 on his scale. And that one person will counterbalance 10 million operating at the level of 200 on his scale and below. That's courage and below. And again, I'll put a link for the map of consciousness so you can take a look at that, because that is really fascinating work. And he wrote the bestseller Power versus Force, which is a brilliant but well worth reading. Also, Dr. Bruce Lipton will frequently refer in his work to it just takes 1% of the population to make a dramatic effect, difference, positive difference to the collective, because none of us can separate ourselves from the collective. We are affecting it all of the time. We're a drop in that ocean that can't be separated. Also, thanks to Stephanie Austin for referencing the Maharishi effect. And again, I'll put that link below, where in their work with transcendent meditation, 200 practitioners could positively affect a city of 4 million. 1% of a community could reduce the crime rate by 16%. And this is the kind of work Lynn McTaggart has done as well. So all of this is simply working with the invisible, working with the power of the mind, working with meditation, and yet getting a clearly measurable result. Because consciousness, as I've said before, is our most powerful weapon. Consciousness is our most powerful weapon. If we don't really like the way the world is going, one thing we can all do, every single one of us for free, is work with our consciousness and work with our frequency. And that's why I keep banging this drum. Many of you will know from the brilliant pioneering work of Dr. Bruce Lipton in his wonderful book, Biology of Belief. And again, if you haven't read that, absolute groundbreaking book. And he had his major epiphany in the lab where he was growing cell cultures in petri dishes. And he suddenly realized that the health of the cells wasn't dependent so much on the environment around the cells. It was determined by the perception the cells had of their environment, the perception that the cells had of their environment. And so he talks about 95% of illness actually really coming from our own emotional state and our own mental state. And he was a major, I don't know if he actually birthed it. I think Dr. Candace Pert birthed this whole area of medicine called psychoneuroimmunology, but he certainly has been a major contributor to it. Psychoneuroimmunology, because it is well known that when we are in fear, we contract. I mean, we all know that, really big, scary thing, which, kind of pull our energy in, and we feel that fritziness and edginess and nerviness and what's coming down the track. And we get very incoherent, jumbled energy, like interference on a television set. It's incoherent. And what that does, if it's sustained over time, is actually accelerate our aging and result in poor health. And by the way, we are also exporting that, we're broadcasting that to all the people we come in contact with. Conversely, if we can stay in peace or love or joy, we can feel the expansion that brings, the expansion in our energy field, and that produces much more coherence in our energy field. Now, that is optimum for the health of every cell in our body. It expands the heart's toroidal field. It results in better health overall, greater longevity. And Greg Braden talks about this a lot, the heart-brain coherence. And also, this is at the heart of the HeartMath Institute work as well, really helping people to get into coherence. I mean, we can do this by being in nature, being in joy, laughing, listening to sacred music. We can do it in many ways. But I was listening to Nassim Harriman the other day because his organization, the International Space Federation, is now developing some anti-aging technologies, healing and anti-aging technologies, and the core of how they are being developed is to increase the coherence in the energy field of the body, to increase the coherence in the energy field of the body. So the more that we can do this, not only are we helping ourselves, our own health, or expanding our heart's toroidal field, but we are infecting the collective field for the better, and we are infecting everybody we come into contact with greater coherence. And we can't stop infecting people. We do it all the time. It's like you catch each other's energy, like you catch a cold. And some years ago, I actually spent 20 years in my career teaching senior management people how to make more persuasive business presentations. So I was reading quite a lot of the research coming out of the big business schools of Yale and Harvard. And they were studying what helps the persuasiveness of a presentation to a business audience. Now, clearly, you've got a lot of content issues, you've got logic flows, many other things, but another big piece was the energy of the presenter. Because if the energy of the presenter and the audience would be infected by that, was kind of edgy, nervy, eye shifty, pulling back, the audience would start to think he doesn't believe in his proposal either. Whereas if your energy was confident, strong, coherent, you had conviction, you could look people in the eye, the audience would start to feel at a subconscious level, energetic level, boy, he really believes in what he's proposing to us. He's the man to do the job. So all of those unspoken energy, body language things would actually have a considerable effect on the influence of the presentation. So at the time, I found that very interesting, but nevertheless, it's kind of gone a major step forward with obviously what we're all focused on now in a much more spiritual sense. So think of yourself as a lighthouse. All through your day, think of yourself as a lighthouse, beaming out energy, beaming out coherence, because that is one big contribution we can make to the world right now when so many people are in gloom and doom. And I powerfully believe there are many different realities. And therefore, I've said many times that I think astrology is only 50% of the picture. And that's why I can't predict specific events, because free will is a big part of it. If you think of your birth chart as your unique sheet of music, how are you going to play it? You're going to play it small, you're going to play it big, you're going to play it with two tin spoons of the London Philharmonic. How are you going to play the music? Until you start to play the music and co-create, it's just a flat piece of paper with your birth chart on it. So the reason I think there are so many different possibilities and realities is because of that. And just think for yourself in the major choice points that you will have. Everybody has major choice points in their lives. Say you're in a relationship that isn't going that well, and you're getting to a kind of choice point. You know, should I stay or should I go? And those have very different future trajectories. You know yourself, depending on which you choose. If you're in a job that isn't making you very happy, should I stay or should I go? Again, that will lead to very different timelines and outcomes. So that's why I believe there are many, I believe actually at a higher level, there are there are infinite possibilities, but those infinite possibilities are then stepped down into probabilities depending on the prevailing astrology in your own birth chart and in the moment for the collective. They're kind of filtered down, funneled down. But nevertheless, there are always choice points, there are always different realities. And that's why we really have to become aware and conscious of being conscious, conscious of when we go unconscious and catching ourselves. Because the universe is evolving through us. The universe evolves through us as humanity in terms of this major point of evolution that we are moving through. And so much of the information, and this is another fascinating topic that, as you know, I'm very interested in, is the subject of water. And we're just really, I think, starting to learn about the power of water and the information that's carried in it. And Randy Hatton, who I've interviewed, is doing some fabulous work with water. And I checked in with him recently and got the exact figures in an email. He said 1 molecule of water can carry 440,000 bits of information, and there are 1.5 sextillion. I don't even know what a sextillion is. There's so many noughts after it, but 1.5 sextillion molecules in one drop of water. That is how much information there is in one drop of water. We are made of water. We are liquid crystals. And this is water. The information is information that we are developing through our lives, but it's ancient knowledge. It's from way back, because some of the water on this earth is as much as 4.5 billion years old. I was talking to Veda Austin about this, because stars are exploding and constantly producing water in the galaxy, and that eventually filters down to us as rain, and we drink it and it passes through us, and we urinate it out, and on it goes. And Veda Austin has called water the great connector, because it is. It's the thing that dissolves all separation, because we're all sharing ultimately the same water. And Veda has referred, which I love, referred to water as God consciousness, which is so beautiful. And so water has so much to teach us. And when you think of, in every moment, your emotional state, your frequency is being embedded, if you like, on that water. And Veda's got just thousands of crystal images to prove that. And even if you go back to Masaru Emoto's work, he was demonstrating that. So this brings us, are we living in fear? Are we living in love? This brings us to a point of spiritual responsibility to ourselves. What are we imprinting our own water, our own cells with for our own health? But also that is going to be passed on. The water, the information, the energy, the frequency. Are we constantly passing on love to the world, not only via our toroidal field, but by the water that passes through us, the God consciousness that passes through us? I mean, this is just immense, I think, in where we are going in our understanding. And I'm so excited by the work of Randy Hatton and Veda Austin. I think they are just breaking so much incredible ground. And also, this leads me to, again, I was listening to Nassim Haramein recently, and he was quoting a paper from the Academy of Science. And what was stated in this paper, and I don't know the details of that, sadly, but anyway, in his reference to it, he said that DNA receives all of its information from water. The information comes via the water. So what we're going through at the moment with the activation of the DNA and the remembrance of the strands that have been dormant for so long is coming from water. So we can start to view water, I think, in such a different way, as this God consciousness of information and ancient knowledge that has never been lost, from Lemuria, from Atlantis, from way before that even, that we can't even imagine. I also have been listening recently to an interesting gentleman. He goes by the name of Joe, and he has a YouTube channel called New Age Arcturian Guidance, and he channels the Arcturians and Ra. And I think he has some very interesting channeling. But there was just one, and I put the link for that below. There was one particular phrase, and I know when I get kind of electrified by phrases, I've got to kind of pursue that rabbit hole. And he was referring to the space in between, the space in between, the space in between your cells. And he referred to that as the void where source resides. Now, this kind of takes us back to the work of the theoretical physicist, Dr. David Bohm, who I wrote a lot about in my first book, that he referred to the implicate order and the explicate order, that there's an invisible field of energy and information, which then collapses into manifestation, into matter. So there's the unmanifest and the manifest, and we are affecting that process again by our consciousness and our frequency. Is that collapsing into healthy cells and more love in our bodies that we can beam out, or not? And so, that this in between this phrase took me back to what I've referred to in several videos about the breath. And I'm going to come to that in just one moment, because this took me on another little interesting journey, because we are well aware that Pluto on the 20th of January moved back into Aquarius. And essentially, it's the beginning of a 20-year transit in Aquarius for Pluto. We are also gradually moving into the age of Aquarius. We're going to have 2,000 years of Aquarius energy. But people who aren't very familiar with astrology struggle a bit, because the aqua bit of Aquarius, they think it must mean it's a water sign, but it isn't, it's an air sign. And so apparently in Celtic myth, knowledge and inspiration at the higher level, and Aquarius and its ruler Uranus are both associated with higher mind, higher knowledge. So in Celtic myth, knowledge and inspiration are associated with running water. What have I just been talking about in reference to all these wonderful people's work about the information that's carried in the water? But then I dug a bit deeper, and I discovered that the word Aquarius, the astrological sign Aquarius, in Indian astrology, in Hindu, the word is Kumbha. And I'll put that below so you've got the spelling Kumbha, Kumba, I believe. And interestingly, the Hindu word for breath work is Kumbhaka. And I found that very, very interesting indeed. Kumbhaka, which appears to be a derivative of Kumbha. And Kumbhaka, and there's even a Wikipedia page about, I'll put the link for that below. There's even a Wikipedia page on this, because Kumbhaka breathwork is linked to the suspension of the breath, the void in between, the space in between. Now, I've mentioned in previous videos and suggested to you that you try some incredibly simple breath work, because it's very calming for one thing. And to keep it absolutely dead simple, you can imagine, if you're just starting off, that you inhale for 4, close your eyes, inhale for 4, hold the breath for 4, exhale for slightly longer, say 6. There's no particular ratio to this, but you're aware that you are exhaling for longer than you are inhaling and holding. And gradually, as you get practice, you can extend that. You may get up to inhaling for 8 and holding for 8 and exhaling for 12. Just play with this. But the most important thing of the lot is that once you've exhaled, and this is what Kumbhaka is focused on, is holding the breath out. So you have no breath. You have no breath, and you're holding that no breath state. Now, many of you who do yoga are familiar with pranayama. This is very much part of yogic breath work. Wim Hof has a particular kind of breath work. Professor Buteyko, who passed some time ago, but he very much was focused on this exhale and no breath and keep extending and extending that. Every day I do what's called soma breath, which is really a combination of all of those. And that for me is non-negotiable, completely non-negotiable, whatever else happens in my day. If I've only got 20 minutes, I'll do it for 20 minutes. If I've got 45 minutes, I'll do it for 45. That is a non-negotiable part of my day, as well as being in nature. And so initially, you may just be able to hold the breath out for a few seconds. The longer you can hold it, the better for your health. But what is happening is you are dropping in to the still point. You are dropping into the 0 point, into that still point of calmness, of bliss, because that is your point of power. And on the Wikipedia page for Kumbhaka, it says that the practice of this, quote, gives magical powers, allowing the practitioner to do anything. This is very much part of advanced yoga. So the still point is our point of power. If we're thinking about the past or worried about the future, as I've said, we're leaking power, we're scattering our energy. But what this does is really connect you to your center, your anchor, your calmness, your point of power, the power of now, Eckhart Tolle. And the more that you can extend that, if you can hold the breath out, and please operate within your own health and your own limits, if you can hold the out breath for say a minute or longer, you are actually in a healthy state. And the more you can do it, and just slightly push beyond your comfort zone, as soon as you start to do that, your body starts to produce stem cells to repair anything that needs repairing in your body. But what this does, as well as cultivate a sense of calmness, is it helps you connect to this feeling of I'm living from the inside out, not the outside in. My inner state is more important than external blizzarding of whatever kind. I'm in control of my energy. I'm in control of my frequency. I'm in control of my breath. And with Pluto in Aquarius, yes, there's a shadow side of our thoughts and our frequency, look, two jaggedy lines of Aquarius, being controlled by technology. Aquarius is very linked to technology. You can see that timeline clear as day. Or are we going to step up into our sovereignty and become masters of our frequency? And this is one of the incredibly, incredibly simple ways you can do this. And pretty much everybody can do this. And you don't even have to go on a course. You can just literally follow the simple explanation I've given here. And so we are in very fast-moving times. And I'm going to be talking, as I've mentioned, to Dr. Jude Currivan at the end of this month, and I've already had a pre-conversation with her. And I thought this was part of chaos theory, but she said it's actually part of systems theory, that when we have a lot of chaos and turbulence in the outer world, things are breaking down. And I kind of intuited this, that because everything is freed up energetically, there is optimum potential to jump to a higher state of being. There's greater potential, rather than it being just a linear progression in our state of being. There can be a bigger jump, a greater potentiality. So that's also what we're in at the moment. I hope you're with me. I know this is a bit of a ramble, but I found some of these things exciting, and there is some vague logic to where I'm going. Now, clearly we have a huge amount of information out there. The internet is a great blessing. It's connected us. But it's very easy to become scattered. And that's what that breath work counteracts in its absolute simplicity. It counteracts that. And people send me stuff all day long, videos and articles and stuff that, and there's no way I can get through all of it. But I'm very well aware that there is a complete spectrum of predictions, visions, etc., out there, going from literally a dystopian Armageddon with, you know, endless war, disease, death, misery, poverty, all the way through to nirvana and bliss. There's the whole spectrum. And as I've said, yes, I do absolutely believe we have infinite possibilities, then filtered or channeled down into probabilities depending on your astrology, the astrology that's prevailing. And comes back here to spiritual responsibility, because why would we want to focus our attention and energy on the worst case rather than focusing it on the highest case? You know, remember Paul Levy, your focus and attention is a superhero power. Starve out the scary, love in the good. And so really here trying to encourage you, as soon as you feel, oh, you know, that's taking my frequency down, stop, turn your attention to something else. Even if it's just, can I hear birdsong? Do we have blue sky today? Has it stopped raining in England? Anything that will just flick you to a different place, because we are not in a rehearsal. We're not even in the dress rehearsal. We are in the biggest evolutionary jump for humanity right now. With the trailblazers, with the cycle breakers, you want to stand tall and be proud when we get to the end of this and think, I could not have done more. I could not have tried harder. There's nothing more I could have done. I'm going to look myself in the eye in the mirror. I did everything to maximize the best possibility. You know, no stone unturned, to starve out the scary and love in the good. I think we've all, to me, that is why I'm here right now. There is nothing more important than that, because everything cascades from that. Everything in my life, everything in the life of the people around me, in the collective that we are all affecting, comes from that. And yes, of course, our reality isn't just determined by our own efforts. It's affected by the collective consensus. It's affected by our own karma or our soul contracts, etc., etc. But nevertheless, I believe we have great free will, great latitude in how we play the music. And, you know, I've banged on about that forever. So really, another place I want to go now, is we are moving into a time with all of this, and many of us are aware of it and feeling it every day, of an expansion of our consciousness. And that is why we're shifting to greater multidimensionality. And that is why many of us are having these greater psychic experiences. We're seeing, you know, angels or guides, or, you know, there's a lot more synchronicity happening in our lives, that kind of thing. Many people are experiencing that. And that is part of Saturn moving through Pisces, dissolution of density, dissolution of 3D time, 3D reality. Saturn will be in Pisces until February 2026. And I've talked a lot about this elsewhere on Saturn in Pisces videos. And so therefore, with this expansion of our consciousness, we can start to see things we couldn't see before in our universe. For instance, the dwarf planets, the deep space Kuiper Belt objects. They've been there for thousands and thousands, maybe millions of years, but we couldn't see them until we started to expand our consciousness, develop stronger telescopes, and all the rest that follows. And they equally are helping us to expand our consciousness by incredibly exciting archetypes of new Earth. So this constant, again, free flow feedback loop with the cosmos of creation. And with this Saturn in Pisces, we are really going through time slippage. Many of us are feeling it, where, you know, time is all over the place. Days last about 3 hours long. You're driving along a road, you've already driven that bit of road, you know, deja vu. So a lot of time slippage as our consciousness expands, our density dissolves as we move closer to the light body. But this then connects to something else. Over the last few days, I've been watching some of the work of Robert Edward Grant, whose work I think is extraordinary. I have huge respect for his work, and I'll put a video below of his that just came out of just think a few days ago of the discoveries that he has been making in the Egyptian pyramids, I think literally since Christmas. Literally, this is kind of hot off the press, hot off the pyramids. And what he observed in the king's chamber that has not been observed before, and again, he said it's because we're expanding our consciousness that we can see this, is the zodiac signs, the constellations running round the walls in the order you'd expect: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, etc., running round in linear time progression as we experience it. But above that, there was another layer which describes the shift of the ages, which was running in the opposite direction. So we move from Aries, the age of Aries, back into 2000 years roughly of the age of Pisces, and we're just shifting for another 2000 years into the age of Aquarius. The signs go backwards when we're looking at the shift of the ages. All astrologers know this. This is not a surprise to astrologers. We're very aware of that. But when you think about it more deeply, time is clearly moving in two different directions at different levels. Absolutely. And it got me thinking not only about this dissolution of 3D time, but also about the techniques that we use as astrologers in our day-to-day work. Any of you familiar with astrology will know that we have a technique called progressions, which is where we take each day after the birth of the person as representing a year of their life. So say we take 20 days after their birth date, and that will represent the year they are in when they are 20 years old. That's fractal. That's a fractal expression of time. And the universe we know is fractal in many, many ways. There's a whole series of, Russian dolls. But also, not many astrologers use this technique, but I find it incredibly powerful, a technique called solar arcs. And I don't want to get into the explanation of this because we'll be here for hours, but essentially, the speed of your solar arc individually is determined by the month of your birth, whether you're born in the summer or the winter, because the solar arcs will have different speeds. Doesn't matter southern or northern hemisphere where you're born. So that's very individual to you. And it has to be very specific to you because there is an accumulating error year by year if you get that wrong. Now, that's not linked to linear time. It's actually an organic unfoldment of time. It's partly fractal, but it's really an organic unfoldment of time from the acorn to the oak tree. And even when you're 80 years old, not only is your birth chart still accurate, but so are the solar arcs, as long as you've pinned down the exact solar arc progression, let's say, year by year for that person. And the computer does that for you. So astrology teaches us. I was asked a question about time in an interview recently, and I think I gave quite a poor answer, which is what sent me on this rabbit hole hunt. So we know from astrology, not only does time go forwards and go backwards with the shift of the ages, but time is cyclical, time is fractal, time is organic unfoldment. And I think with Robert Edward Grant's discoveries in the Egyptian pyramids, as I've been talking about for 2 years, we are on the brink of really big paradigm shifts in the understanding of our cosmos and our galaxy. And what is fascinating, isn't it, that the language in the king's chamber wasn't in Chinese or Spanish. It was astrological. It was of the constellations. It was of the astronomy. Why did they choose that language to embed in the king's chamber? And that's a fascinating question, isn't it? Because it's not only a sacred language, a symbolic language, a geometric language, but it's clearly a galactic language. And this then leads to the work of Robert Bauval. I'll put the link for that below. It's a brilliant best-selling book called The Orion Mystery. He was a buildings engineer originally, but he spent 10 years kind of decoding the language of the pyramids. And it was only when he was aware that there were two big pyramids and one smaller one offset. And it was only when he flew above the pyramids in a plane that he realized that the pyramids, I've talked about this before, the pyramids were a perfect mirror image of the belt of Orion. Robert Edward Grant talks a lot about Orion and the connection with the pyramids in his work as well. And so it is very likely, therefore, given these inscriptions in the King's Chamber, given that you only see the buildings layout of the pyramids from out there, from the air, that the builders of these pyramids who wanted to leave their information, their message for us, that they were galactic beings. They're strong, because if you were just doing it all from the ground, you wouldn't necessarily write it in the language of the stars and build the pyramids in that configuration. I hope I'm making sense here. And so that, this is on the brink of reconnecting us back to our galactic citizenry, as I've said many times, but doing it via the maths, doing it via the science. I just think we're on the edge of something absolutely mind-blowing. And so really is worth watching that video between Alex Ferrari, who runs Next Level Soul podcast, interviewing Robert Edward Grant about this. And as I say, this is literally new information that's coming through to us, and huge respect for him. So bringing it back to us, what role can we play in this whole, because if you think about all that, you will get very excited about our future. You will shift your focus, excuse me, away from the gloom and doom, excuse me, you'll shift your focus away from the gloom and doom into excitement for what's coming. And you'll just let 3D crumble behind you. So think of being conscious of your consciousness. Catch yourself when you become unconscious of it. Think of your spiritual responsibility to yourself. And think of your spiritual responsibility in this unique evolutionary leap for humanity. And perhaps I can just leave it with a quote from the Buddha: as we think, so we become. Thank you for listening. If you're still listening to me at the end of this video, thank you for hanging on in to this long ramble. And I really hope something has sparked for you, that it will create kind of ideas and ignition points and jump leads for you too, for you to go off and do your own research, because we are all co-creating together. All of us are helping each other in this huge evolutionary jump for humanity. God bless. See you again very soon with another update. Bye for now.